All right, so let's get started. I have just a short time, so I'm going to go pretty fast through some of these things, but we'll get through it. So I'm going to start out this morning talking about something unusual. It's very modern. We call it teleportation. Anyone here teleport themselves? No? Not yet? Okay, so what am I talking about? Teleportation. So there are these 3D animated worlds. My 13-year-old daughter plays in one of them called The Sims. Anyone ever hear of The Sims? Yes? These sort of 3D simulated world. You can build houses and interact with people and stuff like this. But there's another company that makes a similar product. That was a good catch. It's called IMVU. Anyone ever hear of IMVU? Show of hands, yeah. Those of you who may be raising your hands have read the Lean Startup book, correct? Okay, so, thank you. So the Lean Startup describes this story that I'm going to talk to you about right now. The Lean Startup basically came out of Eric Ries's company, a company called IMVU. Prior to founding IMVU, he founded another company which raised a lot of money, built something nobody wanted, and it died. Okay? So when he started this new company, IMVU, he said, I'm going to succeed this time, and I'm going to do everything differently than last time. And this is where the Lean Startup was born. Okay? So they make this 3D animated world. Okay? And it's the early days, but they have customers, they have people playing the game. The only trouble is that you can't move your character yet, okay? And so the customers are saying, I want to move my character. And they say, oh no, they want something like in The Sims. And The Sims has a lot of money, it's been around not longer. Costs a lot of money to make an animated avatar move through 3D space, not bump into things and all of that, right? So they didn't even have that kind of money in the early days. So they had to do something, and basically they come up with a hack, a total cheat. They felt ridiculously embarrassed even making this thing. And here's what it looked like. Basically, you got to click to decide where you're going to teleport to. The teleportation is simply clicking where you want to be, and suddenly you're there. And they were embarrassed. They did this in a couple of days, and then they released it. Lo and behold, the customers loved it. They couldn't believe it. They were astounded that the customers liked this cheap little feature they put in there to solve this problem of moving the avatars around. It only took 2 days to implement. And they had basically discovered that when they asked the users, they said, what are your top 3 favorite things about IMVU? The customers, one of the things they said was the avatar teleportation system. And some of them said, it's even better than The Sims. What was going on here? So, basically, I look at this and I say, well, they were basically trying to make their customers happy. Okay, that was a focus. They had to experiment with something inexpensive because they didn't have a big budget. So they experimented with this really cheap feature. They delivered it very rapidly, right? We just talked a little bit about delivering value continuously. And finally, they protected their budget, and they implemented the work in a very high quality way, at least, so this worked. It was very simple, but it worked, right? It didn't crash. So it's a quick story about IMVU. Now, we'll switch to this company here. How many of you have used Amazon to buy something? Okay, many of you here. They're of course, extremely popular in the US and around the world. Fastest company to ever reach 100 billion in annual sales. Fastest company in history to do this. They serve consumers. Okay, now maybe some of you are in enterprise, right? You don't deal with consumers. Okay, Amazon Web Services deals with enterprises, right? They deal in APIs. And they grew to 10 billion per year faster than Amazon. Pretty impressive, right? What agile process do you think that they're using? let's see what they're actually using. So in a shareholder letter to in 2016, Jeff Bezos, the CEO, he said that these two companies, Amazon and Amazon Web Services, they share this distinctive organizational culture that cares deeply about and acts with conviction on a small number of principles. Okay? Now, in most companies, you see the values written up on the walls and you just walk past them, right? Nobody cares about the stupid values that some people came up with at a group retreat 10 years ago. Who cares? That's not how it is at Amazon. When he says that they care deeply about and act with conviction on these small number of principles, he means it. And what are the principles? Well, of course, they're from the Agile Manifesto, right? No. I'm sorry, they're not from the Agile Manifesto. They're quite different, in fact. Here's what they are. Number one, customer obsession. Right? How many of you are obsessed with your customers? Obsessed with making them awesome? Eagerness to invent and pioneer, willingness to fail. Jeff Bezos said in the same shareholder letter that he's proud of them being the best in the world at failure. How many of you here have a Amazon Fire phone? Oh my God, nobody has one. You know what? They don't care. For them, that's a tiny little blip in the $100 billion they're going to make this year in annual sales. It's a tiny little blip. No big deal. They learned a lot. They'll use that learning in something else. Taking professional pride in operational excellence. Anyone know how often Amazon releases to production? Anyone? Every 12 seconds. Every 12 seconds there's something new being released. Okay? By the way, that's not continuous delivery. That's called continuous deployment. That's all the way to production. Patience to think long term. Amazon is in this for the long term. They don't have to muck around with shareholder value and please Wall Street with quick little wins. They're in it for the long term, right? That's a safety thing. You can fail, it's okay, because we're in it for, decades. So these are 4 principles from Amazon, okay? I will relate them at some point to what we're doing in Modern Agile. Modern Agile. I've been doing this stuff since 1998 or so, helping companies around the world with my company and colleagues, all right? Agile has fundamentally morphed and changed and improved over that time. If you're doing an Agile process that basically was invented in the 1990s, then I would say you're probably doing some antiquated or outdated practices, okay? These books here are some of the books that have fundamentally changed what Agile looks like today. What modern Agile is. Comes out of these books, these kinds of practitioners. I wouldn't say this is the only books. There are other books as well that influence this. But these thinkers here have fundamentally changed the game. And a lot of these came out in the last 10 years. Okay? But what about this? The Toyota production system. World famous for putting Toyota on the map as a leading competitor in the automotive space. Everyone has tried to copy TPS, the Toyota production system. And the 2 pillars of it are respect for people and continuous improvement. Right? People who study lean software development are very familiar with this. Okay? These 2 are timeless principles, right? They're not like things that I say from the 1990s that have now become antiquated. It's timeless wisdom. That's not going away. So it's not that old stuff is antiquated, it's just that there is some old stuff that we've now have better ways of doing them. Principles like this will live on forever. Okay, so I believe that to be agile, you have to be in balance. Okay? What a lot of people do in an agile adoption is they adopt a management layer. There's no technical practices. In fact, more and more, wherever I go, they say, we're doing Agile, and now we want to do some engineering stuff. And it's really sad because they're in such a bad state of affairs by the time they want to bring in the technical stuff. It's wrong from the very beginning. From the very beginning, you need to get balance. This is my brother. It's one of the happiest days of his life. He got to ride the dolphins. I've never done this, so I'm really envious. And he was the last person to be online. So he kept watching people do it and fall. And so he figured out what he needed to do. And he got that balance. And these two dolphins really are respect for people and continuous improvement. They are technical and managerial. They are the care for the customer, obsession for the customer, and that total obsession with quality engineering, with operational excellence, right? That's the balance you need. Agility requires balance. I do not refer to the Agile word as being what a lot of people think it is, which is effectively sprints, stand-ups, and story points today. Agile in the dictionary is this quality of being moving with quick, easy grace, and it's this quick, resourceful, and adaptable character, right? The word quick is in there on both of them. If you're going to be quick, you better be in balance. You better be adaptable. And moving with quick, easy grace tends to mean there's some operational excellence there. You can't move with easy grace if things are falling apart all the time. So this is modern Agile. I brought a bunch of stickers. If anyone wants to put one on their laptop later, come on up. These 4 principles are what I've distilled down from about the last 20 years of doing this stuff. Okay? I think these 4 principles are incredibly important, and I think you can become much more skilled at Agile if you focus on these 4 principles. So, if we think of the pillars of the Toyota production system, right? Respect for people and continuous improvement, they're here as well. On the vertical axis, we have respect for people, okay? Make people awesome, make safety a prerequisite. These are thinking about people safety. They're thinking about making people awesome. Those people, who are they? They're your users, they're your coworkers, they are anyone in your ecosystem, anyone involved in the software process. It could be the auditors, making them awesome. That's respect for them. So experiment and learn rapidly and deliver value continuously. This horizontal axis here, that's where we do continuous improvement. Okay, so that's how the pillars fit. Really quickly about me, I'm the CEO of Industrial Logic. I am active on Twitter. I'm also active on Snapchat. I've fallen in love with Snapchat as a medium for communicating. I rarely go on LinkedIn, but you can twist my arm there. So if you ever want to find out more about me, that's some information. And let's keep going. So, has anyone ever experienced this? Total optimism at the beginning of a sprint. You're going to make your sprint commitment. And then goes on a little bit. Oh, yeah, we're still going to make it. And then, oh, God, I don't know about this. And then, oh, God. Well, what if we stop retesting and refactoring? Then maybe we'll make it. And then finally, yeah, we did it. It's done. It's the definition of done. We checked it in. The product owner accepted it, but the code sucks. Anyone? Does that happen here at all? Anybody? Oh, yeah, a few of you experienced that. The rest of you have never experienced that, I'm sure. Okay. I don't believe you. This guy here, one of the signers of the Agile Manifesto, invented story points. He's apologizing for story points now. Sorry. Oops. People have done crazy things with this. Jim Highsmith, another legend of the Agile world, another signer of the Agile Manifesto. He wrote a book about adaptable software development in the mid-1990s, precursor to Agile. He said velocity is killing agility. Talk about Agile theater. I wrote a whole blog on this, my most famous blog ever. If you want to read it, it's called Stop Using Story Points. Okay, it's pretty long, but I recommend you check it out. These things have been killing agility, but making for very good theater. Very dramatic and fun. Okay, so Agile is not this. It's not marked by a ready ability to sprint, estimate with story points, and conduct stand-up meetings. That doesn't make you Agile. That's rituals. It's just rituals. Okay? You're not making anyone awesome by doing that. We got to get out of the deliverables business. It's not the number of stories done per sprint. That doesn't mean anything. It's a terrible metric. The definition of done is fundamentally broken in Agile. Okay? A product owner accepting your work is done means nothing. Nothing. The users have to use it. You have to have metrics on their usage. You have to see if they're actually becoming more awesome because of your new feature. Otherwise, you're just playing games. You're just in Agile theater. Okay? The Manifesto for Agile Software Development, 2001 this thing came out. Uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. There's nothing wrong with that statement. What I can say is this. Our company helps companies do Agile in hardware, in embedded land, in software, in marketing, in all kinds of processes. It's not just limited to software anymore. So that's one thing that changes. The other change is we're really trying to focus on awesome results. So modern Agile says we're uncovering, meaning we still don't have all the answers, better ways of getting awesome results. That's what our focus is. Okay, so how many of you here learn to ride a bike with training wheels? Okay. Now a lot of people have said to me, now Josh, don't get carried away with this modern Agile stuff. You know, you're advanced. You've been doing this for a long time. The rest of us are new to this. We need training wheels. Does that sound right? I mean, you don't want to start out with this modern stuff, right? You need training wheels. It's basically the equivalent of saying to someone, like one of my daughters, you're new to using a computer. You've never used a computer before. You're not ready for this nice little MacBook Pro here. I'm going to give you this big, fat, thick laptop from 1994 because you're not ready for the new stuff. That's about as smart as this is, okay? It's total nonsense. I don't like training wheels anymore. I'm off of training wheels. Well, I can ride a bike, but my daughter just learned to ride, and I'm going to talk a little bit about her. She learned to ride a bike without training wheels. Amazing. Amazing that there's another way to learn to ride a bike. That's different from training wheels. Oh my God. Now this poor schmuck is sitting here. You can kind of see the training wheels right there, right? And I just felt bad for this guy because he had all the tools and he was sitting there in the park trying to get the training wheels to be lower, then a little higher, then this and that, and his daughter was crying and not happy, not learning. And here he is. And okay, fine. Look, he's very close in case she falls. And then we have them again. Look at him. Now the training wheels are off and he's like basically escorting her, holding her. Okay? This is nonsense. Now, here is a push bike. Okay? I'm too cheap to buy a push bike, so I didn't buy one, but I said to my daughter, just don't use the pedals. I brought the seat very low down. In the space of one day, she learned to ride a bike. Let's see what happened.
Oops. All right, you're okay. There's an old expression. When you fall off a bike, get back up on it. Ready?
I'm coming up only to hold you under, and coming up only to show you roll.
Just learn to balance. There's that poor
we
schmuck.
wonder. To know you all wrong, we were. Really too late to call, so we wait for morning to wake you is all we got. To know me as hard.
Okay, that's that. So I bring this analogy to you today because I'm very passionate about this stuff. And, you know, I watched us create Agile back in the late 1990s. And we created it to dismantle waterfall, okay? To take it apart and replace it with something far better. Okay, back then we called it the lightweight methods movement before it was called Agile, right? We were getting away from these heavyweight waterfall processes and moving to something much more lightweight. Today, I think we have to do the same thing again. We have to take this very thing we call Agile, which has become the new waterfall, and we have to get back to being a lightweight process. Simple, lightweight, based upon principles like Amazon follows, that helps us achieve awesome results. This is the push bike of the Agile world, okay? No more training wheels, no more moving parts, a simpler, better way to learn balance. And now I'll just quickly go through some of these concepts from modern Agile. So, make safety a prerequisite is one of the 4 principles. Back when the Trojans lived, they had a rule. They said, you could lose your helmet, you could lose your sword, but never lose your shield, right? Your shield protected not only you, but your other fellow soldiers. These shields, they have little symbols on them that we created. They are saving you money, time, your health, your reputation, relationships, reputation, and information. These are 6 things we identified as being really important for protecting, right? Now, if you have a culture of fear, we find that there's no process, there are no practices that are really going to help you. Cultures of fear, whether you're afraid to change the code, or you're afraid to speak your mind to your colleagues, or you're just afraid in general, you're not going to be awesome. And let's talk about the story of Miles. This is a fellow who basically had a Bachelor of Arts degree, wasn't a computer scientist, got a job working at a social gaming company, and had learned to program the prior summer, so he wasn't very experienced. And when he got to this job, they didn't really train him too well. And they put him alone working on a new feature of a social game. That feature involved a new database table. So he had a new database table, and his code would insert data into the table, and then he would evaluate whether it was correct or not, and if it was wrong, he would delete it manually with a tool. Right, he used a little tool to delete the contents of that database table, and then he'd work on the program again. There was only one problem. The database table was in production, and his code was basically hitting production. Okay? Didn't have a sandbox environment or anything like that. Absolutely ridiculous, right? One sleepy afternoon, he accidentally deleted the contents of the wrong database table. It was the user table. All hell broke loose. The managers started walking in, no one can purchase anything, the users are complaining, it's going crazy. It was a disaster. He went into a conference room with the CEO who said this. The whole company had to stop what they were doing, and they didn't have a database backup. They had stopped paying their bill 3 months earlier, so there wasn't any backups. Insane. Like the most unsafe software development shop you could possibly imagine, right? And that was the culture there. He did leave the company a few months later, and then he basically got out of being a programmer very quickly thereafter. Now, another story for you. This is Etsy. Have you heard of Etsy? Right? Marketplace for arts and crafts of sorts. They had a site outage. Whole site went down. A programmer who had only been 7 days on the job deleted a CSS file, checked it in. They do continuous delivery at Etsy, so basically they didn't catch anything and they pushed it to production. And the particular CSS file was critical to a certain page. When that page couldn't load because it didn't have the CSS file, it tried to show the error page. When it tried to show the error page tried to bring in the same CSS file. Infinite loop happened, memory crashed, Etsy's down. What happened to this particular guy? What do you think happened? This is what typically occurs in most companies, right? Blame, lots of arguments, fighting, your fault, my fault, their fault. How could this happen? People are not really afraid of failing. You fail all the time. They're afraid of blame, right? Cultures of fear are very thick with blame. At Etsy, this guy wasn't blamed. He wasn't retrained. He wasn't criticized by his coworkers or asked to basically, stop programming in that area and move somewhere else. He was given the 3-armed sweater award, right? Imagine you're knitting a sweater and you accidentally knit a 3rd arm. It's an award they give once a year to the most spectacular mistake. And this mistake taught Etsy a valuable lesson. It taught Etsy, how can we build software that can crash the whole site just by one file being missing? That's terrible. Shame on us for being such poor software designers. And thank you for showing this hole in our armor, for showing this problem. Thank you, and here's the award. That's the culture there. Quite different. Then we have this crazy man here. Massimo Bottura, 3-star Michelin chef, has a restaurant in northern Italy that I want to go to someday. He's a crazy Italian artist, okay? You don't become a Michelin 3-star chef easily. He makes one of the dishes he makes, a dessert. It's a lemon tart, very delicate, okay? His sous chef, Japanese fellow, one day was making 3 of these lemon tarts, and one of them dropped and completely crumbled. You have some special guests waiting for the lemon tarts. What do? Another failure. Massimo looked at the situation and did something extraordinary. He immediately cracked the other 2 lemon tarts and invented a dish called Oops, I Dropped the Lemon Tart. Today it is an iconic dish of this restaurant. They made a special dish for it which looks cracked as well. The dish itself looks cracked, and it's an unbelievable thing, right? Imagine working with Massimo, where you make a mistake and your boss, Massimo, discovers a way to make it into art. Incredible, right? That's a culture of amazing. It's a culture of feeling that everything is possible. The mistakes are not treated like, you're an idiot, get out of my kitchen. Project Aristotle, 2-year study at Google. They wanted to study what makes for high-performance teams, right? What makes a high-performance team at Google? Is it the people that work together and play together after work? Is it the people with the right cross-functional team with the right number of experts and so forth? What is it? What makes for a high-performance team? They studied and studied and studied, and they could not find the answer. They couldn't find a common denominator until one day they started looking into psychological safety. psychological safety. And they discovered it was the number one thing. Out of 5 things they identified, psychological safety was the most important part of a team. That if you had the freedom and you felt okay to make a mistake in front of your colleagues, to be vulnerable in front of them, to disagree with somebody, maybe even a superior, if you had this in your team, this was the common denominator for high performance. Now, the last time I looked, I haven't seen any mention of psychological safety in any of the popular Agile processes that any of you talk about, right? There aren't vendors saying, come, get certified in psychological safety. Doesn't happen. And yet, we're noticing some really important things about teams and high performance. And they have nothing to do with scaling Agile. Think about that. This guy here, chief engineer at Google, basically changed the way he runs meetings because of this. He runs meetings differently now. He listens to people. He echoes back what they say. Here are 5 things that we identified in the literature on this, and what we feel are really critical. We started following this in my company, and it's made a big difference. You know, a lot of times you have a meeting, and certain people never say anything. And other people don't even notice. You're not leveraging people's brains that way. You're not leveraging their creativity. The people that are quiet, you're losing value there. Okay? So we started doing this, encouraging people to speak, repeating back what they say, listening carefully, being caring and curious when they disturb us with something instead of angry at them. Just being more caring and curious, non-judgmental, and of course not dominating or interrupting. And in my company, we're filled with Agile consultants, Agile gurus. We have a tendency to have sometimes people interrupting each other. So this is a big change for us. Stop work authority, another thing I introduced. I've been studying safety in other industries beyond software. There are industries where people do things that could kill you, right, or your colleagues, right? Other industries like that. And in many of those, they carry around stop work authority cards. I brought some today. Some of you want some afterwards. These things can be flat. Every single person has one, and you can flash it to people and say, stop work. This is what you're doing right now is unsafe. Okay, I've had this called on me as the CEO of my company. I've used it on others. It's like an andon cord in the Toyota production system, right? You can pull the cord and stop the production line in the Toyota motor factory. This is your andon cord. Okay, stop work. Tailboarding, another thing we've added in to make things safer. Do some risk management, right? An old-fashioned term, risk management, before you start doing some work. You might have a backlog. Hopefully it's not too big. Once you start deciding you're going to work on something, think about how it could go wrong. Think about what might be hazardous in that kind of work and talk about it. It's going to hopefully ideal to lead you to safer results. Mob programming, another practice we've been playing with, brings a lot of safety to programming because so much of programming is just thinking about how to write good code. When you have a bunch of minds participating together, you tend to get better results. Okay, make people awesome. We'll start out with this. This guy. Everyone know this guy? I love this guy.
Wait a minute. Must show you this. Lickable wallpaper for nursery walls. Lick an orange. It tastes like an orange. Lick a pineapple. It tastes like a pineapple. Go ahead. Try it.
I got a plum. Grandpa, this banana's fantastic. It tastes so real.
Try some more. The strawberries taste like strawberries. The snozberries taste like snozberries.
Snozberries? Who ever heard of a snozberry?
We are the music makers. And we are the dreamers of dreams.
Remember this. We are the music makers and we are the dreamers of dreams. We're not just iterating and we're not just adding little tiny improvements to things. We need to go after some big stuff. Make people awesome requires big thinking. As an example, my daughter there, the one that learned to ride her bike, Eva, she was having a birthday party, and she said to me, I would like to have water balloon fight, right? Water balloons, we fill them up with water, and they throw them at each other, and they throw them at me too. When she said this, I was like, oh God, I'm gonna have to buy the balloons, fill up each and every balloon with water. It's gonna take me forever to tie them. I'm not very good at that. But she wants a water balloon fight. What am I gonna do? Luckily, we found something at the store that made me as a parent awesome.
Modern balloon, water balloon technology.
That's going to pop off. Show it. Show it.
Can take more. All right, so the product wasn't perfect. You know, there was a little bit of leakage here. I couldn't get it to stop leaking on the side there. One of them popped. But the little package came with about 4 of these things. So I had like 200 water balloons in the space of about 3 minutes. I mean, it was absolutely awesome. Whoever thought of this was brilliant. And this is just a huge step forward, okay? Now, that's her at the party having a ball with her friends. I have in my car the safety stuff that helps me when I'm parking. Any of you have this in a car? Yeah? So it's in the front of the car and the back of the car. So when I park, it's a lot easier because the sensors are always on, helping me park, helping me avoid hitting things. I love it. I can't imagine not having this now. It's both safety and it's making me awesome at parking. Awesome at not running people over. Most of you here must use Apple Music, right? Oh, just a couple of hands. Oh, I wonder what's happening. You know, I got Apple Music about 6-8 months ago. Very excited. You know, I thought they're nicer to the artists than some other companies in terms of royalties. I have a friend who's going broke because he's an artist and can't make any money anymore. But Apple Music was initially really well received in my household. And I have teenage daughters. Okay, teenage daughters listen to a lot of music. Here's one of them. This is my oldest, Sasha. And she basically loved Apple Music when we first got it. And then I think a month or 2 ago, you know, Beyonce came out with an album. And she wanted to get it. It's $18, but we got it. And then a funny thing happened. It just disappeared off her phone. She had it one minute, and then the next minute it was gone. And she wants to go to school and play Lemonade by Beyonce. All of a sudden, she says, I hate Apple Music. My other daughter says, I hate Apple Music. These are daughters who go to school and talk to other daughters. And they talk amongst themselves. And before you know it, people hate Apple Music, right? Only a couple of hands went up here. What are they doing? What's on their product backlog? Boy, it got really bad. Tim O'Reilly, I mean, he's got well over 1 million followers. He retweeted an article about how Apple stole my music. That was bad, but then Martin Fowler retweeted it. That made it doubly bad. We got a lot of eyeballs reading this story. What happened? Well, remember that little thing I said, make safety a prerequisite? How safe do people feel using Apple Music? And what fancy features are they working on, right? That have nothing to do with just the basic safety of not losing your music. You see, without principles that guide us, you can build all sorts of things, but you're going to be misguided. You have to have these anchoring principles if you're going to be amazing, if you're going to have products that people love. I love Slack. I use Slack all the time. Anyone use Slack around here? Some of you? As a business owner, it's really nice because when people don't use Slack, I get emails saying a credit has been added to your account. How wonderful. A credit was added to my account. They actually are giving me money back because someone didn't use Slack that month. How many products do that? I feel that they have my back. They're protecting me. Most companies would just suck more money out of me, right? Hey, the more users, the better, the more we can get out of this guy. And yet they're giving me money back. That changes my relationship with Slack. Makes me feel like I've made an incredible decision in using that technology. I'll just quickly skip over this because it's going to be, I'll say this really fast. The Japanese invented the bullet trains, right? They go 120 miles per hour. I guess you use kilometers here, but whatever. They're extraordinarily fast, and they did this in the late 1950s, right? Late 1950s. By 1964, you have a bullet train leaving Tokyo traveling 120 miles per hour. That's insane. Call it bullet train thinking. Think of it as Willy Wonka's lickable wallpaper. It's beyond anything you could ever imagine, right? When Jack Welch, the CEO of GE, came to Japan in the early 1990s, he heard about the bullet trains. And he went back to GE and said, we need bullet train thinking here now. We need bullet train thinking. We can't just make little tiny improvements to our jet engines and our other product lines. We need to think big. So to me, I want to inspire you. Make people awesome is thinking big, right? The water balloon technology and all the other cool things that we see in the world today that make a huge difference to our lives. That's what we're shooting for. Eric Ries basically said, yeah, if you just do the minimum and iterate blindly, you're almost sure to get stuck at a local maximum. Experimentation tied to vision is key. Vision is about making people awesome, right? Finally, you have to recognize people when you're doing this stuff. Making people awesome in your workplace involves other humans, and if they're working hard and making amazing things, recognize them for what they're doing regularly. Experiment and learn rapidly. Thomas Edison said this: a successful day is doing a lot of experiments. Lots of experiments. That's what a successful day looks like. Zappos, very famous. They were acquired for $1 billion by Amazon. They basically started out with an absurdly primitive website that just had photographs of shoes. And if people wanted to buy the shoes, they had to literally go to the store, buy them, and ship them. It's photographs of shoes to start this what became a giant retailing site. Experimenting and learning rapidly. Experimenting and learning rapidly and inexpensively too. We tried this once. We said, you know, we had this idea for a feature. I came back from a conference where I saw the CEO of Intuit speaking, and he said, well, when people are doing their taxes, we have an ability to let them chat with each other. So these are customers who are able to chat with each other on that particular page of the tax form, and they can help each other. I said, what a great idea. I'm going to bring this back to my company, and we're going to do this in our e-learning software. So when two students are on the same place in the e-learning, they can communicate with each other in a live chat. Now in most shops, you simply write up their user stories, give it to the programmers, and they work on it. But we don't work that way. We've fundamentally changed as of learning things like Lean Startup. So what did we do? We did a feature fake. We put up a fake notice on every part of the e-learning that said this: total lie. 16 users from 4 countries are online right now, join the chat. It's not real. We didn't even do test-driven development. We hacked it in to the template of every HTML page. We then built a report to see who clicked on this. And if they clicked on it, did they take our little survey? Right? The survey basically said, oh, sorry, the feature doesn't exist yet. Would you want that feature? Would you be likely, unlikely, or neutral on using it? And then we got the data. And only 22% of 100 people, so 22 people, clicked on join the chat. Out of the 22, only, I think 14 took the survey. We didn't force you to take the survey. I don't like to force people into things. And out of that 14, only 6 said that they were likely to use it. 6 people out of 100. Okay, maybe those numbers don't suggest that we should do this feature, make this feature. So we decided not to make it. And I think that was a wise decision. And we learned that in 2 hours of work. 2 hours to produce this little experiment, get it in production, because we do continuous deployment, and boom, we got our answer. 2 hours later, we said, we're not going to waste the time on that. That's experimenting and learning rapidly, right? Saving us time and money, not building things our users don't even want. We recently looked at our sales process and said, how could it be more modern, agile, right? Modern agile is not just for software. We said, how is our sales doing, our sales process out of my company? And we noticed something. We had about, was it 5 of us here, or 4 of us did this survey, and turned out we were not experimenting and learning rapidly enough around sales. And so we said, we better ramp up our experimentation around sales and try some different things. Deliver value continuously. This is an old graphic from IMVU. Remember IMVU, Eric Ries's company, where they were doing continuous deployment around 2007, 2008. Early pioneers of continuous deployment. Timothy Fitz, who wrote this blog, was the guy who coined the term continuous deployment. And he called this doing the impossible 50 times a day, right? They had millions of users actually using the site, and they were deploying 50 times a day. Incredible. Making it safe to deploy. That's what continuous deployment's all about. And I just want to tell you a quick story about a company that we've worked with, all right? This is what their world was like. On a Monday, the developer would say, I checked in some code, manager. The manager would say, great, there's 69 other developers that need to check in. I'll ask them all to check in by Wednesday. Wednesday comes. Not everyone checked in. Please finish by tomorrow. Okay, we'll go to Thursday. Thursday, thanks everyone, all the code's checked in. Friday, Ramon, do the build. Ramon, sure thing, Kelly. Ramon, broke. Friday afternoon. Not a good time for the build to break. It means the developers are working all weekend. And what do you think is going to happen on Monday? Anybody? Bugs, right? Problems. QA. Wow, a lot of bugs in the build. What do? We keep working to fix the bugs. This is what their world was like. Okay? And this was not specific to one team. It was across the company. Very sad. And the company is Yahoo, and this is a public story. They've shared this publicly, so I can share it. Here's what they did. And they did this with a little bit of my company's help. They went from quality assurance, manual testing, to quality engineering. The formerly QA people either left the company or came to our classes on test-driven development and refactoring and learned to write tests, learned to refactor, learned to work with the developers to actually build safety nets of tests and do them well. From there, they discovered that once they had more safety, they could move away from sprints into continuous flow, flowing value to the customer. Still doing manual deployments at this time, but they were doing them more regularly and not on any given cadence, right? You have something done, ship it. Work some more, ship it. Finally, they went from manual builds to continuous deployment. That was their journey. It was their journey across all shipping products at Yahoo. And believe me, it was not an easy journey. They had people there who said, we are not doing continuous deployment, that's crazy. Now those same people swear by the practice. They love it. And it brings to mind a phrase I often say. If your process is lowering your stress and lowering the stress of the users, it's probably a good process. If stress keeps going up, it's not a good process. So you use that as a metric, because we found that continuous deployment lowered our stress. Finally, Airbnb, a place that I think is doing some incredible modern agile work, right? And they are such a shipping culture that when a new employee comes in, Within 2 days, they're shipping to production. They literally have it set up so when the new employee comes, they have a mentor, they choose a bug or a small feature to work on, they help set the person up on their own machine, and within 2 days, they have shipped to production. That's a shipping culture. All right, I'm going to conclude the Agile Manifesto from 2001. I think this is an interesting thing that occurred. I wrote a blog on Modern Agile back in either October, November of 2015. Someone left a note on the blog, a guy named Carl Scotland. He said, Josh, you know what? I like your Modern Agile principles, I think, a little bit better than what's in the manifesto. I was like, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that at all. But the more I looked at it, the more I thought maybe there's something there. I had no intention of rewriting the Agile Manifesto. I still don't. But I'll share with you what Carl Scotland said to me that day in the message. He said, you know, customer collaboration, I think it's better to say make people awesome. Whether they're your customers or your coworkers. And working software, what about delivering value continuously instead of just working software? Maybe working software is an older idea. Let's deliver value constantly to our customers. Responding to change over following a plan, maybe we should be just experimenting and learning rapidly. And finally, individuals and interactions. What kind of interactions? Right? We could have very negative interactions. We could have the kind of situation Miles had when he screwed up the database table. That's an interaction, right? It's not a very good one. So make safety a prerequisite. So I offer this to you as an idea that maybe we can update our principles to be a little more modern. I had originally written this is in my early blog on Modern Agile, where I anointed about 12 practices to go along with the 4 principles. I have now invalidated that and said, I am not here to anoint practices for you. I will give you these principles, do with them what you like. I will provide a bunch of stories of people that use this stuff, but the practices you have to come up with yourself. That's Modern Agile. Thank you for coming. You can go to modernagile.org if you want to learn a little bit more. It's a free website to check out. I have the stickers if you want some. Thanks again.